So yes, we have apologies for Martin, who represents the Jewish community. We've got apologies from Laika from the Glastonbury Islamic Society, but she's actually asked me to, she was really upset that she had a clashing engagement, but she was really upset that she couldn't attend because she really had a topic that she wanted to talk about. So we're going to, I'm going to, you know, touch on that today so we can kind of get the conversation going. We've got people from interfaith chaplaincies that couldn't come. Oh, actually, we're just waiting on Fran as well. She hasn't arrived yet. So we've got, you know, there was quite a lot of interest. Sarah from the police wasn't actually able to come, but there's been quite a lot of interest around this topic, which is great. And you know, as I was just saying, that perhaps this can just be the beginning of the conversation. So maybe while we're just waiting for Fran to come on, maybe we could all just quickly introduce ourselves so everybody knows who we are. Justna, my colleague, would you like to start?
Of course, thank you. So I'm Justna. I work with Somerset Diverse Communities as a community engagement officer. So I work with ethnically diverse communities across South Somerset and Mendip. And we develop different projects to support communities from diverse backgrounds and support kind of multicultural events, people coming together, community cohesion, all of that kind of thing, really.
Great, thank you. And Gina?
Hiya, yeah, I'm Gina. So I work for a social research organisation called Research Your Way. I've spoken to, I think, most people here, not everyone though, and we're carrying out the impact evaluation for Somerset diverse communities. So yeah, just tracking basically the impact they have on local people and communities in Somerset. So yeah, really great to be here. Thanks, Janine.
Thanks. I just need to let people know it's being recorded. Sorry, I should have done that at the beginning. Ewan? Hello, Ewan.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Ewan Huffman, I'm the chaplain at HPC, Hinkley Point C, with a fairly diverse community, actually, and fairly good-sized Christian and Islamic communities here.
And Andy?
Morning, everyone. Yes, Andy Spragg. I run the Sanger House Wellbeing Centre in Taunton. I'm an NHS chaplain from the Buddhist side, but I engage with people of all faiths. I get called in to see whoever needs chaplaincy. I present the meditation show on Tone FM. I'm the author of the book, The Magic of Noticing. There we go. That's me.
Excellent. And before I introduce you, Martha, or actually probably best that you introduce yourself, I'd just like to say that Andy worked with us for the Interfaith Roadshow in the Interfaith Week and has become a great member of our interfaith network. And Andy also represents the Buddhist, well, maybe not the community, but the Buddhist faith. Yeah, so that's excellent. I guess the reason that I set this, well, for two reasons. First is the first day of the World Interfaith Harmony Week, which is a new UN-led program that started, I believe, in about 2010, and has a week of people doing things together. So I thought it would be really good to kind of start the week talking about issues that make it difficult for us to actually engage with people that we perhaps perceive to be different from ourselves. And so that's why I've invited Martha along today from SARI, and she'll obviously introduce herself, tell us a bit about herself, and give us some statistics and some information about religious hate crime in Somerset and perhaps
Good morning.
UK-wide.
Thank you, Janine. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming and taking the time to sort of be here. It's really great to see so many of you, meet so many new people. As Janine saying, I'm Martha. My name is Martha Anachury de Bruxelles, quite a long name. I work for SARI. I am the outreach developer worker for Somerset. So I cover the whole of Somerset, and my role is to sort of engage with the community and bring awareness and understanding around the issues of hate crime. unfortunate. Is something that is quite prevalent in society. SARI is a charity that was established back in 1998, I believe. So it's been a long time in the area. It's based in Bristol, so some of you know that if you sort of ever come across. And originally, when it was set up, it was just to do with race hate crimes. But because of the changes to this legislation, the Equality Law 2010, and then the government introduced 9 protected characteristics, which is from 5 of those hate crime is recognized. The type of work that SARI done has changed. So now we concentrate in all those protected characteristics and different types of hate crime. And of course, religion, unfortunately, is one of the types of hate crime. We have a team of around 30 people that we work in different areas. So we cover Bristol, Baines, North Somerset, and Somerset. My role, as I say, is an outreach development worker, but we have case workers. So the case workers we have in Somerset, there are 3. They will deal with all sorts of types of hate crime. And every year we produce figures to show the type of hate crime that is happening in and around Somerset. So at the moment, for figures for last year, just for SARI, so these are just cases that they have come to SARI, they've been recognized, they've been deal with it. We have 54 cases from people from the Muslim community and 51 people from the Jewish community. We have only 1 from the Buddhist community, and all of the other religions is 0. But this is just cases that they've been people that have come forward, because at national level, you have 8,471 cases last year. So when we say last year, the figures for hate crime, they are produced nationally every year around October. So we're looking at over around 8,000 cases nationwide. And these are cases that the individual or the police have recognized as in relation to hate crimes because of religious reasons. The cases nationwide for hate crime in general, you're talking about 155,000 and more cases. So the number could be bigger because, of course, not everyone who's a victim of hate crime understand that they are victims of hate crime. If they understand it, they report it. If they report it, they want something done about it. And the other factor that you have to have in consideration is that when you do hate crimes, you have gender, you have race, you have religion, you have disability, and you have transgender. So if it's very clear that is, for example, race, it will be classified as race. If it's very clear it's religion, will classify as religion, disability, and so on. In some cases, when you're talking about race and religion, they tend to be quite meld together. So, for example, a person will be insulted because they're Jewish or they're Muslims, and sometimes the person say, they've been racist, and they come forward and say, that someone have a racial attack. But when you start investigating and looking through the thing, you can find that, for example, there will be other reasons. So we have what we call intersectionality, when an individual can have a variety of representation. As an individual, I'm a woman, that's my gender, and Christian, that's my religion, I'm heterosexual, that's my sexuality, and my only disability is having to wear glasses. So as an individual, we all come with different layers. And when some crimes are investigated, they tend to classify in one area and not in others. Some of the figures that we have last year from Avon and Somerset Police, they start doing this multiple classification. When a case, when the person is being hurt, insulted, or they're being assaulted because they have 2 or 3 protected characteristics, those 2 or 3 protected characteristics will be classified. That type of classification, what it does, it helps to sort of show what is happening around in society and what's happening, so we can actually start dealing with the individuals, dealing with happening, and at the same time, we classify 4 areas. So some areas of, for example, Somerset, some type of crime that are more prevalent than others. There's some spots in Somerset which is they are hotter than others. But when you look at the whole area that we cover, Bristol, Bains, North Somerset, East Somerset, Somerset in general, Bristol is still the area with the largest proportion of people reporting case of hate crime in all areas. So in Somerset is less, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening. The problem is that it had taken a long time for individuals to get to know that you can actually report it. The other thing that I was discussing with Janine is we don't have the same level of structures that you have, for example, in Bristol. You don't have the groups and societies and organizations and get together when people can start investigating and talking about those. So, for example, the work that I do in Somerset is twice as harder or difficult than the job that my colleagues in Bristol or Bath are doing, because they can come across organizations, groups, entities, local government that they are there to help these people. For me, it's a case of digging and finding out these organizations and groups and trying to reach as many people as possible. The only good thing is that Avon and Somerset Police, they are make hate crime one of their priorities, and they consciously collect the figures and they actually are dated. And one of the reasons was because, I don't know if you remember the case of Bijan Ibrahim, who was an Iranian asylum seeker. He came to this country, he was living in Bristol. He was a Muslim. He has some disabilities, special needs and so on. And he was a very gentle and trustworthy character. And unfortunately, the community where he was living accused him of being a pedophile. And one of the reasons was because children used to throw stuff in her house. They used to pick up his flowers, he was very proud to be a gardener, and he enjoys gardening and so on. So he used to collect information about those attacks. And he went to the police and reported all those attacks. He did everything that you're supposed to do, report the attacks. The police gathered evidence. So, he took photos and so, hence the accusations. Unfortunately, he was killed. They set his body on fire. And as a result of that, what happened was that Avon and Somerset Police were investigated. 3 officers were sent to jail. Others lost their jobs. Others sort of left the post, but made Avon and Somerset aware of their failures and decided to improve the situation by prioritizing hate crime. So every fortnight, that will be tomorrow, for example, I will be attending 3 different priority meetings. So you have Mendy priority meets, you have South Somerset priority meets, and you have Taunton priority meets. And in there, we look through all the different crimes that's happening in the area and see, for example, if some of them, they will be hate crime, if they're not being classified as such. Sometimes they haven't been classified as hate crime, so I can identify and say, this is a hate crime, they need extra support. Sometimes it's a crime that, for example, there being some burglaries, some robbery, something else, but at the same time, there's a level of hate crimes involved. So we have to identify that, and we have to get the people to get the support needed. Not everyone accepts our support. Not everyone is willing to be referred. Some people that come forward and say, well, this has happened to me, but they don't want anything happening. The other problem that we have is some schools, for example, when a child commits a hate crime, under the law, if you are under 10, you are not criminalized. But the moment you are 12 and over, you can be criminalized. So anything that happened in a secondary school in relation to hate crime or hate incident, the police will be calling, and they will have to talk to the students, the parents, and so on. Most of the time, the teachers want to deal with the incident in the schools, and they don't want interference from either the police or someone like SARI. So we are very keen to get into schools, and we provide free training. It's called a twilight session. So that twilight sessions that are available for teachers. The same sessions, similar sessions we provided for organizations and groups. We had done for National Health Service, everyone. So because we want to create awareness and understanding around hate crime. So for example, tonight I will be attending, I will be going to a youth group in Froome to deliver a training about hate crime. And the idea is that if we empower the community, if we let them know that certain behavior is a hate crime or a hate incident, because hate crime is when you have an incident when there is a criminality behind it. So you do something that is criminal, say assault, battery, robbery, damage to property, and so on. But you can have an hate incident, which is not criminal, but at the same time, it creates, for the individual who's at the receiving end, it had a great impact in their life. So you could be belittled, you can have harassment, you can have online hate, you can have all sorts of forms of, for example, in the workplace, you can have discrimination that is not criminal, but it really makes the life of those who are in the receiving end, suffer a lot. So we want to educate the public, we want to create awareness, we want to create understanding, because if we allow this type of situations to happen, for the individual, it can get worse. I mean, the case of Bijan Ibrahim is something that it gets analyzed in lots of books about hate crime, and because it shows tiny little sins. They were doing tiny little sins with him that they were, people say, oh, well, they're only just kids running and knocking on the door. They're only just kids picking up plants and throwing it. It's only just kids throwing eggs, and it's just insult. It's just a neighbors being unpleasant. It's nothing much to do. And actually the police moved him, but they didn't move him far away. They only moved him within the neighborhood. So, of course, someone who is quite easy to recognize was targeted again. So, and you get to the point when individuals are so evil and they create so much hate in their life that they actually beat a man to death, tie the body to a tree and send it to fire. I mean, it sort of shows that small sins cannot be left unattended. Those small sins that create the Holocaust, the small sins that get society into believing. Just because you had a different religion, you had a different gender, you decided to change your gender, you had a disability, that somehow you are not worth of society. And I mean, I have one religion and I know a little bit of other religions, but there is not a single religion that approve a certain behavior. On the contrary, they are all talk about some level of inclusion and understanding and caring for the rest of humanity. So the problem, for example, is that when you get individuals that they are brought up, sometimes because of their religions, we have some cases when we discussed in one specifically yesterday, when there are people who just arrived to this country, so they are new and they couldn't understand how it's possible that two men were allowed to live together, because in their own country that is not allowed. They've been that's the law of their country, wrong, right? That's what it is. In the religion that it was not accepted, and of course they started expressing behavior that is okay and normalized in that country because you have a government that decided that that will be the law. But in this country, we have a legislation that said that you have 9 protected characteristics, including, for example, who you can love, who you can marry, that will recognize all religions, including the fact that you don't have a religion. That's recognized. If the fact that you want to be Druid, if you want to be white witch, is recognized. If you is someone who have a very strong ideas about being vegan, that's recognized, that is protected, that is respected. So you cannot be, for example, fired for your workplace because you refuse to deal with meat in a meat counter when you are a vegetarian. You have laws that say that you're protected. You can worship whatever you want to worship, if that's what is your right. But when you have other people that were brought up believing something different, we respect their belief, but at the same time, you have to respect the law. And sometimes you have that conflict when the law says, you can marry a woman, you can marry a man, you can marry someone from the same sex as you can marry someone from a different sex. You can marry someone who just have transformed themselves from one gender to another. You can marry that person and they can change gender during the process. But if you've been brought up with a book, with a religion, with understanding that is against your God, you have to reconcile the two. And yes, we have said that all other religions can be sort of be worshipped in this country. But at the same time, you have to respect other sections. So there's been conflict sometimes. For example, I don't know if you remember, there was a case of a stewardess, someone who worked for British Airways, and she wanted to wear a cross in her uniform. And there is very strict regulations with relations to what you wear or not wear with your uniform. Everything is prescribed from the length of your nails and so on. So she argued that was her religion. She wanted to express her religion. And the company argued that as Christians, we are not expected to wear anything. So I don't have to wear a cross to say I'm Catholic. If I want to, and I have so, and sometimes I wear it, sometimes I don't. But if you're a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, you're really expected to wear certain symbols to represent that religion, and that is accepted. So in the end, she loved her case. They won it because you can get that. There was another case when a couple was running a bread and breakfast, and a couple made a booking for a double room. As a couple. When they arrived, they discovered there were two men. They refused to allow the booking to take place because they said, well, we are from this religion, and secondly, you have witness or some Christian religion, and it goes against our religion. It may go against your religion and your belief, but the moment you establish an establishment and you are taking customers and you are delivering a service, your belief is stayed to one side and the service that you provide to the customers come first. So there was exactly the case with someone who was a registrar at London Borough of London. There was a same-sex couple. She refused to perform the services because it was against her religion. She didn't believe in sex marriage. She lost her job because she's providing a service. She's a service to the community. Your belief, once you are a stand in front delivering service, cannot supersede the law. And recently we have a case in Ireland when a teacher refused to call a student by the students wants to be called they, them, because it's transitioning. So when a person is transitioning and they feel they have two entities, one day they could be very feminine and one day they will be very masculine. So rather they are not she and they are not her, or they are not him. They could be she one day, it could be he one day. So they prefer to be called they or them. So the teacher refused and he kept calling him, which is for the students was offensive. The head teacher said you have to, call him as he referred. And rather than go middle of the way and just call him by his name, purposely he was calling him all the time. So he was suspended, came back and continued with the same behavior. He was actually sent to jail. And one of the conditions was that he couldn't return to the school to teach, but he went to the school. So the case is continuing, it hasn't come forward. He's in jail again because he keeps breaking the law. So you can see, and for him, it's because it's a Christian religion. He had a very, very strong belief that only you can be a man and you can be a woman. And he cannot accept the fact that there is people that can be transition and they can change their sex. He's not accepting that because his religion doesn't say that. But the law says different. The law says that you can change your gender. And the moment you are, as I say, providing a service as an individual, someone can sort of say, you know, I'm not going to call you that. But if you're not providing a service, it's different. If you are working in a school, and university, National Health Service, if you are opening your house as a bread and breakfast, as something else, you have to start treating the public and putting the conditions of the equality law into place. You cannot ignore that. So, for example, that couple who didn't want to have the same-sex couple to stay as a bread and breakfast, if they were just someone coming to visit their house, this is my house, it's not a bread and breakfast, I can say who can come and not come. But once you decided to open your place or your service, or as an individual, you provide this service and you are part of a community, it's different. So, as I say, you know, all those conflicts is something that creates sometimes tensions between communities. It creates misunderstanding, and it's something that we try every day to sort of minimize, because you know, we are in one world, regardless of what we believe. And I think the most important thing is that we have to treat each other with respect, and that we have to sort of acknowledge each other's difference and accept them. You know, you don't have to sort of go along with it, but at least you can sort of have that humanity that, you know, prevails in everything that you do.
Thank you, Martha. That was absolutely fantastic. And I guess really, when we live in a country that has all of these laws, we have to understand that we live in a country that has a lot of rights, but it also has a lot of responsibilities. And I think from my experience, when new people come, they're taught about their rights, but they're not actually taught very much about their responsibilities. And it makes it very difficult, because they don't actually understand what is required of them. They're told what is given to them, what's available to them, you know, what the school is, where the hospital is, where the free healthcare is, where whatever the government is providing to new arrivals is. But very, very seldomly do people say, and in return for all of this, this is what's required of you. You know, this is how we act and what we believe and what we do, and these are the laws. And often it's well, mostly it's not the fault of the new arrival or the new immigrant, because you know, I've just recently moved back to the UK after being away for many decades. I'm English, I understand the language, I understand the system, and I'm still going, I don't know. And so for people who it's not their language, it hasn't been their experiences, it's not their religion, it's not their culture, to be just kind of thrown in and expected to really understand how things work, I think it's a very difficult position to expect people to be in. So, you know, we do have, as a society, we have a responsibility to, yes, inform people of their rights, but also educate them about what it means to live in this country and what they are required to do and how they are required to act. And now that does not mean integration where you give up everything and you become, you know, you go to the chippy and you have your mushy peas and you don't eat your curry anymore, or whatever it's going to be. But it means on a legal and social level, you do act in particular ways. But even obviously people who live here, who are born here, who understand their responsibilities, still don't abide by them in the case of the murder of this man. That's really very tragic. So before I kind of open up for a bit of a discussion, I'd just like to welcome Fran, if you'd like to just quickly tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Okay, I'm here as a local Quaker, but also a member of Citizen Somerset.
Welcome. And Rahma, who's from the Taunton Muslim community, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, I'm Rama. I'm trying to get the video on, actually. I can't seem to be able to.
Okay, can I help you from this end?
Yes, please.
There we are. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Rama. I'm in Taunton. I have been here on and off back in northeastern Nigeria. My mother's from Bridgewater and my father's from Nigeria. So
Welcome.
Welcome. Yes.
and they were my late mother was together. So I've been very familiar with you know, interfaith, harmoniously, you know, religious tolerance, and they, you know, they lived a beautiful life regardless of their differences. And I think that's what we should all aim for, because there's really more we have in common than we have differences.
Yeah.
So, thank you, and thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming. So does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to make, or questions for Martha at this point?
I think the one thing I was thinking about when when Martha, you were talking, is the one thing that runs commonly through all of these races, through all these religions, is of course compassion.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here. You know, sometimes the rules of our lands, the rules of our religions in our heads potentially give us an excuse, if we warp them correctly, to not behave compassionately. These individuals who are the perpetrators, they've done that. They've found an excuse for their behaviour in their heads, I think.
Yeah.
And therefore they justify it themselves. So, you know, there's two things that are being broken here. There's the rules of the land and the rules of compassion. And I think with the awareness and the approach that we should, you know, as a society have to tackle this from both angles. So I think we have to make people recognise that, yes, they have a religion, but sitting on top of that as a priority, it should be compassion and the avoidance of suffering for others.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And as like Ram was saying, you know, there is a lot of what is, I had the sort of privilege to do a course. It's called in religious understanding, and is to sort of create awareness and understanding all the other different religions. And it was a case, you know, we were finding ourselves in this school saying, oh my God, we had that in my religion, or we do that in my religion. And there is so much that we have in common, and all of them, they call for compassion, for understanding, for tolerance. But unfortunate, the name of religious is always used to justify people's behavior, to justify the anger, to be justify their violence, and sometimes is abused by other individuals who can see someone they can manipulate and brainwash into committing some heinous act of you know, terrorism. It came to mind after the Manchester Arena bombing. There was an individual in Southwest who got himself wrapped up into the event, and he went into the internet and started looking at different things, and of course came across with a, you know, right-wing white supremacist group who brainwashing into going to Finsbury Park, you know, from Southwest London to Finsbury Park, and commit a hideous kind of killing some worshippers coming out of a mosque on a Friday. So until that individual, by law, it was a good citizen. It had never committed a crime. It had never had made an act of violence. But the state of his mind was in prime condition for these white supremacists to manipulate his behavior, to change the way he thought, and committed, you know, quite a heinous crime. And when they investigated, for example, his computer and his behavior, the two things, mental health and getting into these radical organizations, was you know, ideal circumstances. And unfortunate, in some cases, manipulations of people's behavior is something that, in the name of religion, is something that people abuse in order to sort of create, you know, this act of violence. But the reality is that all religions actually, you know, will look for peace, tranquility, and integration with the rest of society and humanity.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point, because we just celebrated, or we didn't celebrate, we commemorated Holocaust Memorial Day last Friday, but it was also a celebration of people of goodwill coming together to recognise the atrocities that are visited on people, and unfortunately are still visited on people, but also to commemorate ordinary people. So the theme was ordinary people, and it was about ordinary people who acted in extraordinary ways to help save people and protect people, and ordinary people who also acted in extraordinary ways to victimize and abuse and kill people. There is a lot of discussion and scholarly studies going on about the Holocaust and ordinary people. And I was reading an article about the Rwandan genocide. The thing about the Rwandan genocide is family members were actually killing each other. And it's kind of like, well, we can talk and we can engage and we can be friends and all this type of stuff. But what sparks somebody in something that they know someone so well, but they're prepared to kill them. And I just want to read something. Dr. Omar Maktoum did a study on the Rwandan genocide, and I just want to read something, some of his conclusions. And he said, to find out what happened at this local level and understand who the killers were, Dr. Maktoum conducted several hundred face-to-face interviews with the Rwandans, some convicted of crimes and some still at large. He says, I was influenced by the research that found many of the Holocaust perpetrators were ordinary people. And after surveying the prison population, it did seem that there wasn't anything demographically distinct about the perpetrators of the violence at all, other than being overwhelmingly men and a little younger. And he goes on to say, we often think of violence as being antisocial, but I found the pro-social were more likely to be drawn into the violence. He said, I found that individuals who lived within 300 meters of a killer were more likely to be involved in the violence. He also found the killers had much bigger social networks than those who didn't participate in the violence. Who you knew and where you lived mattered. And so, what he was basically saying from his studies and from his discussions with people in Rwanda and victims and perpetrators was that there seemed to be this connection. So someone did something, so you did it as well. It kind of you were caught up in this frenzied moment, and any kind of rationale or I know this person, it's my brother, it's my sister, it's my cousin, didn't seem to matter if you were in that vicinity. If you were further away from that vicinity, the isolation seemed to be something that protected you from getting involved. So I don't know if anybody has any comments that they'd like to say about that, their own personal experiences perhaps, or things that they've come across.
Yes, if I may. Hello?
Yes. Rahman?
If I may, actually, speaking on the lines of in Africa, I lived most of my life in northern Nigeria and at the epicenter of Boko Haram, which is Maiduguri. Until 2015, the expatriate community weren't allowed into Maiduguri because of safety. And we were the first responders, humanitarian, Red Cross were just sending tents and had a small presence. But to speak about the religious hate crimes there, it was insinuated along the earlier lines that this was against Christianity. Well, at first, a lot of bombings and suicide bombings targeted churches, but the Boko Haram recruitment was so easy for the perpetrators to actually do because of the poverty level, the corruption, and the total misappropriation of funds by the government officials and politicians, which is evident all over. And they started targeting mosques as well, because if you didn't belong to this fanatical belief, this introduced form of fanatical Islam, you were seen as even a greater enemy, because they said, well, if you're a Muslim and yet you don't belong to these lines, then how you're even worse off in the eyes of God. So the thing is, that hatred, they used what I have a video of actually that I tried to even get the state-owned television to share there, and I think they did once, which explains it's like if you have a military card or booklet. I did CCF here in Wellington for 3 years. So you're given, let's say, like a military illustration book that if you go to war, use the bayonet if you run out of ammunition. That is for a period of war. And one of the intermediaries between Boko Haram and the government was a chap called Ahmed Salkida. So one day I actually asked him, Ahmed, what is the reason? Well, how do these people think? And he said, they're just using excerpts from some scripts that were given for a period of war between Muslims and Christians and whomsoever, and they now tore that big part out of that script and now used it as something that is permissible for all periods. It was never. And if you even in the video, the person even says, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if you're fighting and someone surrenders, you have to guard that person, get off your horse, make sure you protect him, take him to his home and make sure he's protected in his home. There are no cutting down of trees, there are no killing children, no killing women in every period of war. Now, my wife's late father, my father-in-law, was killed by Boko Haram, by someone who knew him, a person called Abor Carpenter. He held on to him and said, we're not going to harm you because you gave back our land. He was a district head next to the emir of that Burma. It's a local government. And he said, we're not going to kill you. We didn't get your brother, so we're just holding you in the meantime. Now, the reason why he wouldn't kill him, he said, was because he was a very good person. He gave them back their land when some rich man took the land off them. And when they brought him a token of gratitude, he refused to accept it. He said he just did it because it was the right thing to do and because he's fear of God. So in that case, sir, we're not going to kill you. But that person went to fight in Kondiga. It's a town just 15 kilometers from Maiduguri, where I live. And they've never breached that town. Otherwise, they would have taken over Maiduguri. So he was injured in Kondiga. He got back to Burma and he died as a result of his injuries. The next person who took over him was a younger chap who was more like wanting to rise up the ranks. And he actually executed him. That video was on YouTube and, so it's very unfortunate, but we believe whoever takes a life, you have taken away all the sins of that person and you're putting the person in heaven. Whoever takes a life, whether Christian, Muslim, you're not allowed to kill even animals for no reason unless to eat. But you see, when my late father was kidnapped as well by people again who knew him, and that Friday, he was at a Friday mosque, and he was kidnapped. That Friday, I went to pick up my children from school because my wife had traveled to Burma. That was earlier, before my father-in-law was killed. And when I was speaking to them on the phone, because I had to intervene through the SS and the state governor, they seemed to know me because they were speaking Hausa to me. I don't speak my native Kanuri language because my mother spoke English to us all, and my father was pretty busy traveling around UN and stuff like that. So familiarity doesn't stop that kind of hate crime, but I think understanding, like if I wish, I've even shared that kind of video to other people to understand these fanatics, or because a lot of the hate is not understandable. It's certainly not, it shouldn't be tolerated at all, but you have to understand where it's coming from. Because a lot of people have misconceptions about what Islam is, or what, even the far leftists or the far rightists, what is in their mind. It's things they're taught. If you're brought up understanding the love of difference and the tolerance of one another, humanity itself is, to me, a religion, because you're not a good man, you're not a good Christian or a good Muslim, you're a good person, and your religion is personal. So that is how I like to look at things. If a person is good, he's good, irrespective of whatever, even if it's somebody who doesn't believe. In Islam, when we have a shortage of rain and you want to pray for rain, it is permissible for even a non-believer to come and stand and pray because God created that person. But you see, very few people know this. So there are many things that people need to be enlightened, and I think platforms to be able to do so, like even if it's WhatsApp groups or having awareness of what we share, with each other, or for people to know, like on Facebook, a lot of things I post on Facebook. And it is with the view, it's with two things in mind, advocacy, and then also to try and see if someone else can pick up and do something similar. A lot of people who I've never put my account number on Facebook, like say send money, but if you do something, so many things, I can just plant 2 trees in my garden or take it out to a park and, just get people to start thinking positively and do things positively, then it really makes the world a better place. But certainly the hatred is inbuilt, and I think it's from people learning things that they're misinformed about. I mean, you were talking about Rwanda. I was telling my Swiss friends, because I have been their point man in Maiduguri. The Swiss embassy controls all the INGOs, Red Cross, Save the Children. So I show them camps and host communities that even the government doesn't want them to see. I take them around and show them. And now Boko Haram, apparently the DDR, that's Disarm, De-Radicalize and Reintegrate program, was run by the Swiss, that, Boko Haram are now going to be reintegrated back into society. Look at it like this. Once they do that, they're going to be given sewing machines or tricycles. Now, the perpetrator of this crime is now going to be better off than the victim. And I said to Nicholas Torrente, I said, look, how does that stand with the community? First of all, the victims haven't even been settled. How would they take it? No, look, here's someone who made my 6 children orphans, and that person now has a tailoring shop, and I'm just being given, stipends for surviving. So not to like sort of get on the wrong side of things with Nicholas, I said, all right, this program you're doing, the government said we're going to take control of it, because the EU had about 17 million euros or something like that, and the state governor wanted to get his hands on it. So they said, no, we're going to run the program. You will be on the periphery. That's the Swiss government, the Nigerian military, and we go around all the camps to see the perpetrators, different categories, fighters, forced people, farmers. So I said to him, I'll just tell you something. I was in this camp to plant short-term trees for them on the recreation area. So I said, I saw 1,000 people getting their heads shaved because they're going to be released back into society or different local governments. I said, didn't you tell me this camp was for fighters? And he said, yeah, yes, they're for fighters. They're not supposed to be releasing anybody. So you see already the government is taking shortcuts because of financial benefits. If instead of training someone or de-radicalizing someone for 6 months, you're doing it in 2 weeks, well, that's more money for the corrupt officials to share. So sorry, I've been going on about that and on that side.
No, it's very, very interesting, because, we get a first-hand account of someone who's actually experienced hate crime. I mean, there's no other word for it, really. People can say I'm fighting in the name of this, that, and the other, but essentially they're people who are filled with rage and hate, and they perpetrate that on others. And
that same local government, there was a boy who killed his father and married off his mother to an Amir in Boko Haram because he wanted to please that Amir. I've seen families in customs roundabout. That's an area in Maiduguri where a customs officer built a very nice house. We can imagine where he got the sources for that, but that's between him and God. But he had 4 sons, and 2 were Boko Haram, 2 weren't. So the 2 who were Boko Haram came and killed the 2 brothers who weren't, and actually slaughtered them. And they took all the money, the jewelry and everything the father had left, and ran off to Burma. That was then, because they used to live in Maiduguri, and just after they kidnapped my father and released him, that's when there was like the civilian JTF came into power, because the military were killing everybody. If there was a checkpoint, I've got videos. I was driving around town being very careful. If there was a checkpoint attacked, the military checkpoints, the military would come and shoot everybody on sight on motorcycles. So what happened was the civilian youth said, well, we're Muslims and we're not going to tolerate someone spoiling our religion. So they literally took sticks and machetes and kicked Boko Haram out of Maiduguri. And, that was quite, because there was an American who was working for the British Council. And I told him, I said, well, you're blaming the military. Yes, I can see how their heavy-handedness is causing concern. But also, why don't you arm these youth in a legal way, take the arms off them, but allow them to protect themselves now? You're giving arms to people protecting oil pipelines, which is a material thing. Why can't you give people arms to protect lives? Because they are Muslims and they say this is nonsense. So, and 2 weeks later, he found out about these civilian JTFs rising up, and he called me and said, Rama, are these your friends? And I said, well, I told you, there are Muslims who go clubbing. There are Muslims who go, I used to go hunting with dogs and sticks, not with guns and stuff like that. And you know, so I said, we are mainstream, and this is an introduced extreme part of that religion that was seeped across from, I think, the Yemenis area and places like that. And I took the Canadian embassy recently. I've got evidence of all this. I took the Canadians to my degree. We sat down with pastors, reverends, and imams in a traditional ruler's office. His name is Hassan Bosoma. He's a brilliant chap. And he brought a reverend, pastor, imam, and they sat and talked about how we lived together in Maiduguri before. Using my parents as an example was quite emotional for me. But also, a reverend cited how his father was going to be killed by Boko Haram, and the imam of the mosque in that area told Boko Haram, "You leave my doorstep or I will kill you," you know, literally. And Boko Haram had respect for that imam, despite them not, you know, being extremists. So the reverend's father was actually saved. You know, there's so many beautiful stories to see how, when the truth is known, it can give you the strength to be, you know, because that imam would probably think, well, if they killed me anyway, this is jihad. By allowing a fanatic to kill me, protecting a Christian is jihad. You know, it's not me doing some crazy thing that is not in any book. It's craziness. It really is madness. And when you look at, I was telling Nicholas and Pascal, these crimes in Rwanda, you can't use Boko Haram as a yard. There's no yardstick for you to say you're going to start allowing these people back into society. I know forgiveness is one thing, but think of the heavy-heartedness of the victims who are still yet to recover. And on an ongoing war, it's very difficult for someone to say, all right, if it's something that passed for 5 years ago, and now you say, all right, they can come back and it's all over. But this is still a continuous war. And Boko Haram have now changed tactics to kidnappings. If you go on my Facebook page, Rama Monguno, you will see even my own local government now, they just use it as a cash toll. They stop drivers, collect money, jewelry, anything they can. And the government seems to want this, not the government, sorry, I beg your pardon, the military, it's like a cash cow. If they end Boko Haram, that's it. No more $1 billion yearly fundings, no more, you know, updating the jets. The Air Force chiefs don't get their share. So we all know it's about money as well, which is very sad when you're playing with human lives.
It is. And I guess, you know, as some of you may know, I've just spent the past 10 years living in South Africa. And, you know, I mean, there's a great example of someone, you know, being persecuted, Nelson Mandela, and coming out of jail and saying, you know, I knew when I left the jail that if I carried any hate with me, I would still be in jail. And so I needed to learn how to forgive. And his famous quote is, no person is born hating. So if you can learn to hate, you can learn to love. And I guess also too, we have to be mindful of the fact, when I was talking about new arrivals, people have come from trauma and have experienced trauma. And we're also trying to expect them to become valued and participating members of our societies, but perhaps we're not looking at that trauma. But just another article I was reading, there is a great series on BBC called The Walk-In, and it's actually about a man who left a right-wing Nazi, you know, extremist party, I think it was in the 1980s or 90s, and actually started a charity called Hope Not Hate. So he was a neo-Nazi, he was in the whole thing, and then he realized, no, this is not how I want to live. And so this series is about that. And an article by the man who actually is part of that charity is talking about the increase of teenagers and right-wing radicalization online. And I guess we don't have, you know, well, maybe not Gina, but the rest of us haven't really lived a teenage life, having to deal with all of these other pressures, with all of these other things that are coming in on us. I said before, you know, if you were getting, you know, called out on the bus or something, it ended when you got off the bus at school, and it didn't continue when you got home, in your bedroom, on your phone, everywhere. And so we, you know, have had the privilege, I think, of growing up not having those external pressures. And so they're saying that the people who are looking at right-wing radicalization stuff online are as young as 13 now. And so, you know, it's really difficult to really know where to start, I guess. And you know, I guess it starts with conversations like this, but often you're preaching to the converted, to people who understand it and, you know, don't want to live a life like this. I had tried to, and I would like to, because I'd like to kind of continue this conversation going forward. I had tried to get hold of someone who, through Martha's organisation, who was a perpetrator for a hate crime, but it's a big process, she was explaining to me. So I may try and continue that process to just understand, you know, what people are thinking, why they're thinking, what sparks it. Is it just lack of education? Is it something more? This article I was reading from by Hope Not Hate was talking about that, you know, right-wing politics or extremism of any kind. I mean, because we would call Boko Haram right-wing. They're certainly not middle-minded people. Any type of extreme views on life are often impacted by societal pressures such as cost of living crisis, unemployment, lack of opportunities, you know, all of that type of stuff. Having said that, there are lots of people who live under those difficulties and they don't become extremists. So, you know, obviously there's something else going on. So it would be really good one day to be able to perhaps get someone to come and talk to us about, you know, why they've done what they did and what they've learnt and what might be different, or, you know, help us understand going forward what we can actually do as a society. So I'm not sure if anybody else has got any comments that they'd like to make before we wrap up. I've just got a few minutes. Yes, Andy?
Just one observation, really. I think those of us that have a faith, one of the challenges we have are from the perceptions of the public who are outside of those faiths, who see lots of examples of these atrocities, and therefore seems to be a kind of gathering view that actually a simple way to solve this is to take away the faiths and just have law. And, you know, I think that would just be an awful situation, because actually what law does is allow people to find the gaps between the laws and use that as an excuse for behaviour, whereas all of our faiths are about compassion. And, you know, if you can start with that seed of compassion and get that in people's minds, theoretically you don't need laws, because
That'd be nice.
everyone wants to avoid suffering. So I think to just remove religion and faith from the world would just be a terrible step backwards, actually. A lot of people would see it as a step forwards. That's a real shame.
You know, that's actually true. I've had some resistance in my job from people saying, why is there any funding or anybody being employed to promote faith? And I said, it's not my role to promote any faith. It's actually my role to support people of faith, you know, from humanists to Druids to Muslims to, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses to Baptists, to everybody who lives by a belief system. It's my role to promote that, to engage with them, to support them, to promote dialogue around them. But people of, and it's not all people of no faith, but there are people, I think, who have been perhaps wounded by faiths that they've grown up in, and are now really on the warpath. There have been some people who have really become quite hostile about the fact that any kind of funding is being given to this type of work. But I totally agree. I think that, you know, we are a world of people of faith in varying degrees, whatever they may be. And if we can support some kind of system where we can engage and support each other and really challenge people to live by their faith. And I think that's what an interfaith kind of network does. It actually says, okay, so you're coming and you're representing Buddhism, Andy. So you've got to be your best self. Doesn't mean you have to be a scholar, doesn't mean you have to, you know all of the ins and outs about your faith, but you're representing that faith, so you've got to bring your best game. And I think that really says, we're here as a community trying to be the best people we can, engaging in a way that opens dialogue and understanding that perhaps other people can learn from. And so I think the notion that, no, we shouldn't, as you were saying, Andy, we should just let it all go, I think is very detrimental. Well, first of all, it's not what our country's laws say. We all have a right to practice, as Martha was saying, but also I think from a societal point of view, I think people have the right to live and practice the way they want to and believe, as long as it doesn't harm anybody else. Once you believe something so much that you're prepared to harm somebody else for it, then I think you've lost the message of whatever it is you're believing. So, so Martha, perhaps you might just want to end off with a few words. You're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been extremely interesting to hearing everyone and sort of encourage, but at the same time sort of create greater awareness and sense of understanding. I had put it in the chat my email address, because there is 2 things if any of you are ever interested to do, and
You're on mute, Martha.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
I saw that I had done it. And so I was saying it's been a very interesting morning.
Again.
What is wrong?
It's saying enough now.
Oh,
go ahead.
Yes. Let's say it again. So it's been a very interesting morning. I have learned a lot, and it's been nice to hear from all your experience and point of view. It feels my heart filled with glee and joy. But at the same time, if any of you are interested to explore more about any type of hate crime, to do something in your communities, we have an Anti-Hate Alliance network, and it's around 15 people come from all over Somerset, Bames, and that, and we meet online about every 3 months and discuss different themes. So we just have a seminar about anti-Semitism. Previous to that, we had a 3 hours training about the LGBTQ community. And the other thing is that I am able to deliver free training either online or in person around hate crime for organizations, for groups. So just to pass the understanding and create the sort of thing that we have to create a better world. The quote from Nelson Mandela is true. No one was born hating, but if the person start having those hates, we need to remove them from their heart, we need to remove them from their conscience, and we need them to stop them, because we need to create a better society. We have seen so much horrors. And I just forward you, Janine, a link for a documentary about someone from Bosnia-Herzegovina who survived the massacre, the Holocaust in that region. Yes, so if you can sort of forward it to the rest of the group, it's very interesting, and it's from the point of view of an individual, a person, just a normal person, and he talks about the changes that he saw in society and in the groups and in family and how he survived that. So it's a really beautiful, engaging thing, just an ordinary person being caught in a really horrendous sin. But it's been a pleasure to meet you all. I have posted my email address, and if you want to get in touch, we're more than happy to hear from you. And thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you very much, Martha. It's been absolutely wonderful, and thank you all for coming and participating. This will be on our website. It will be uploaded in the next couple of weeks, and so if you want to share it around, and happy World Interfaith Week, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you all so much. Have a good day. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.